First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to the celebration of the 65th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And let's just do just a little housekeeping here real quick. I just want you to know that the restrooms for both men and women are right down that hallway down there. We have a couple people that are taking pictures and video recordings of our event. So I hope that you're all right with that. If you have a difficulty with that, just let them know, and they won't take your picture if you don't want them to. So just to get started here, I'm going to be reading, for the most part, I'm going to be reading from this particular booklet here, which you can get on that table back there. This booklet has got the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in it. And there's more copies on the human rights table the Human Rights Commission table back there as well. And we have these for the United Nations table. So there's no way you can leave here without a copy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. On December 10th, 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted and proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Following this historic act, the Assembly called upon all member countries to publicize the text of the Declaration and to cause it to be disseminated, displayed, read, and expounded principally in schools and other educational institutions without distinction based on the political status of countries or territories. And I want to read just a little bit of the preamble to this particular document too, because I think it's incredible. This came out in 1948, and to be honest with you, I didn't hear about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights till about 15 years ago. And I asked my dad at the time, who was in high school when this document came out, so did you guys learn all about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights when you were in high school? And he said, the what? So it's a great document. I don't know that it's been disseminated, displayed, read, and expounded principally in schools, but we're working on it. The preamble starts, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom and justice and peace in the world, whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not to be compelled to have recourse as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations amongst nations. Whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life to the larger freedom. Okay? So today we're going to have some speakers join us. We're going to have some great entertainment. And the way I'd like to start off is we've actually been able to get a proclamation from the mayor's office. And I'd like the Vice President of the Portland Human Rights Commission to come forward and read this proclamation for us. Please welcome Linda McKell-Bim.
I'm honored to read this on behalf of our mayor this evening. Whereas on December 10th, 1948, the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that continues to be a source of inspiration for local and worldwide efforts to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms. Whereas recognition of the dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world, and whereas an essential element of the protection of human rights is the widespread knowledge and understanding of those rights and how they may be defended. And whereas Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, quote, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status, end quote. And whereas the city of Portland is committed to upholding the human rights of all its residents and strives to forward the 30 Articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights through the Office of Equity and Human Rights, the Human Rights Commission of Portland, and groups such as the United Nations Association Portland Chapter to forward and educate on human rights. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim December 10th, 2013 to be Human Rights Day in Portland and encourage all residents to join in its observance.
Thank you very much, Linda. So the theme for this year's Human Rights is Women United. Now, the way we've worked this in the past, say, 10 years or so, we've taken one of the 30 articles and we've concentrated on that and did our program around that. So an example is article number 1, which talks about the dignity of all human beings and treating each other in a spirit of brotherhood. We did our whole program around anti-bullying message. Over the years, we've done different things that would be like on sex, human trafficking, that kind of thing. So for this particular year, we decided that we were going to concentrate. Last year, we had done article number 25, which actually has 2 paragraphs. And the first paragraph talks about everyone having the right to food, clothing, housing, medical care, that kind of thing. And we concentrated on homelessness in Portland, and we were able to talk about that. But I decided that I wanted to do this program around second paragraph in Article 25, which is motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection, because these are important human rights, and I don't know that that had actually been concentrated on before. So I'm going to now turn our program over to the United Nations Association Portland Chapter's Education Committee. And if you please welcome Elaine Nelson and Karen Ettinger, who's also another Vice President of the United Nations Association Portland Chapter.
Thank you, Gwen. The Portland chapter of the United Nations Association, USA, has an annual high school essay competition on the United Nations for Oregon and Southwest Washington students to encourage them to learn more about the United Nations and its work. Every day, the United Nations and its family of agencies work to improve people's lives around the world. The United Nations works on peace and security, economic development, social development, human rights, environment, international law, and humanitarian affairs. Now, the topic for our essay contest this year in 2013 was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 25, Part 2, which you just heard is motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. And we asked our essay high school participants to tie that in with the Millennium Development Goals to reduce infant mortality and promote, I think it is, maternal health. So the Portland, and we work in connection with the Portland State Model United Nations students, and they actually read all of the essays and pick the top 10 entries, and then it's our Portland Chapter Education Committee that chooses the first, second, and third prize winners, and this year we had 7 honorable mention winners too. So the first prize winner receives $100 and tickets to the World Affairs Council of Oregon's International Speaker Series. And in addition, the first prize winner's teacher also receives the tickets to the World Affairs Council of Oregon's International Speaker Series. And so this year, Leo Wiswall from Lincoln High School here in Portland is our first prize winner, and I would like to invite him to come up and read his essay and receive his prize. And his teacher is Tim Swinehart.
Hello, everyone. So my essay is about the importance of family planning in reducing child mortality and improving maternal health. Although there are a number of measures that the international community can take to improve women's health and child mortality, nothing is as fundamental as providing women with access to contraceptives and family planning. Through increased funding and emphasis on family planning programs as a solution to these concerns, the global community can both improve maternal health and reduce child mortality rates. Families experienced a revolution between 1965 and 2005. During this time, the use of contraceptives by women of reproductive age rose from less than 10% to 53%. The impact was huge. The average number of children born to each woman decreased from 6 to 3. Consequently, maternal deaths during childbirth were reduced, child mortality rates decreased, and the rapid population growth that stifled development was curbed. None of this would have been possible without the leadership of USAID and the United Nations, whose programs provided the funding for many of these initiatives. Despite the proven success of international family planning programs, funding for family planning has largely remained stagnant in recent years, leaving many women without access to basic contraceptives and counseling. Over 10% of women lack access to any contraceptives, which results in some 87 million unintentional pregnancies every year. As a result, many women undergo high-risk pregnancies or unsafe abortions that threaten their health. The impact of an unwanted pregnancy on an impoverished family in a developing country can be devastating, both to the family and to the unplanned child. Without contraceptives, many women have more children than their family can support, meaning these children are less likely to be adequately fed or medicated when sick. Furthermore, unintended pregnancies in women with HIV or AIDS increases the likelihood of death because they are more susceptible to disease and illness while pregnant. Still, other women die from unsafe abortions or childbirth, which may leave their children uncared for and unprotected. The international community can improve maternal health on a global scale by increasing funding for family planning programs. Family planning services can save women's lives by reducing unintended and high-risk pregnancies and unsafe abortions. An example of this occurred in Ghana, where the average number of births dropped from 5 to 4 in just 4 years in the 1990s. Rwanda's experience also demonstrates the potential for successful family planning in developing countries. The Rwandan government understood that high fertility rates and rapid population growth were crippling the country's development and partnered with the NGO community to increase access to contraceptives and family planning. From 2005 to 2010, the contraceptive prevalence rate rose from 17 to 52%, and unmet needs for family planning were cut in half, showing just how effective family planning can be. Family planning has also been proven to lower infant mortality rates. It gives women the resources they need to space pregnancies properly. They can thus focus their limited resources on fewer children, which increases those children's survival rates. Quite simply, fewer women die in planned childbirths, meaning children are more likely to have parents available to feed and shelter them. By focusing on maternal health, we ultimately have the ability to reduce child mortality rates everywhere. Women and children deserve basic health support and the tools they need to make their lives better. Family planning is an excellent way to do this.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll hear more from him as he grows up, right? I think he's got some good ideas. The second prize winner received $75, and Hannah Wang of the International School of Beaverton is our second prize winner, but she was unable to attend tonight, so we will be mailing hers. The third prize winner receives $50, and Serena Orduro, saying that right, of Jesuit High School in Portland is our third prize winner, and I would like her to come up and read her essay and receive the prize.
Thank you.
Yes.
I want to make it worse.
There you
Well, what's up? Good try.
In order to achieve the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Goal, Article 25, Part 2, empowering women in third world countries where women are lacking basic assistance is essential. The invisible must become visible and provided a voice and the resources to illuminate the issues in their country to advocate for change. By revealing that an estimated 529,000 women die from complications at birth each year, and that the 3 main killers of children under 5 are pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria, which are all preventable, would receive global attention and pressure governments to support special care and assistance for mothers and children. Ethiopia has already met Millennium Development Goals 4 and 5. In order to meet these goals, Ethiopia set up an extensive training of healthcare workers. Since 2003, nearly 40,000 health workers have been trained and the government pays their wages. Ethiopia has been properly transporting medicine, and nurses at maternity wards have been trained to treat tuberculosis, diarrhea, malaria, and malnutrition. The pressure of reducing maternal and childhood mortality has resulted in Ethiopia's success in reaching their Millennium Development Goals. The use of technology in coordination with the training of their workers and stock of medicinal supplies is a tangible example displaying a successful method for other countries to replicate. Certain technological developments will likewise be a major factor in reducing child mortality and improving maternal health. 1/3 of newborn deaths in South Africa are due to respiratory problems. Neonatal resuscitators, an inexpensive machine used on babies who struggle with their first breath, are one of numerous pieces of technology that needs to be distributed to vulnerable areas lacking equipment. Another technological advancement that assists in improving maternal health is the Mobile Alliance for Maternal Action, or MAMA. Based in South Africa, MAMA is a texting service that provides pregnant women and new mothers with information and support, including a website, social network, and voicemail. For example, mothers with HIV/AIDS receive messages explaining the critical importance of taking the antiretroviral treatment and the prominence of testing their children. To assist with illiteracy, messages can be read aloud in English, Zulu, Xhosa, and Afrikaans. This system has aided thousands of lives in South Africa, giving advice on women and children's health, and if spread transnationally would improve thousands of more lives. Coordination of organizations and governments determines whether the Millennium Development Goals 4 and 5 will be met by 2015. All preventable and treatable diseases such as pneumonia and malaria can be treated with simple and cost-effective interventions. Agencies need to evenly distribute their work instead of being concentrated in one area, and to train their healthcare personnel to diagnose patients and supply them with ample medicine and supplies. In many situations, agencies will have trained staff but lack medicinal supplies, or will have supplies of medicine for untrained or undertrained workers. Improvements must also be made to have the ability to transport children to health clinics for more complex care if needed. Ethiopia has set a great example for other countries by establishing a strong trained healthcare force along with utilizing the technological developments available. The ability to drastically decrease maternal and childhood mortality will be achievable by 2015.
You can see why we like to have the students write essays. But we also had 7 honorable mention winners, and they each received $20. And if any of them are here, please come up when I read your name. And then all participants in our essay contest do receive a certificate. And they are also invited to become members of the United Nations Association as student members. And I would like to invite everyone here who is not a member of the United Nations Association. We have membership forms like this at our table. But the honorable mention winners are Chuck Ning of the International School of Beaverton, Wesley Sen of Lincoln High School, Cynthia Poley of Cascade High School in Turner, Oregon, and Katie Lee of Lincoln High School, and Colton Beer of Phoenix High School in Phoenix, Oregon, and Manza, I think it's Brizanti, of Park Rose High School in Portland, and Amanda Hare of Phoenix High School in Phoenix, Oregon. So you can see we got a lot of different high schools, but some of them are a little ways away from here. Appreciate all of the work that the students put into their essays, and we actually post the essays on our website so that the top 3 winning essays are there for people to read. So if you want to get a closer look at those.
I'd like to put in a plug for the World Affairs Council. I'm the K-12 education. Sorry. I just wanted to put in a plug for the World Affairs Council of Oregon. I'm their K-12 education director. We call it the Global Classroom. And if you're wondering how we had students applying or writing essays from as far away as Phoenix, is that we are the World Affairs Council of Oregon. And I have, I think, 1,000 teachers that we've connected with over the years. And it's been a great pleasure to work with the United Nations Association and also in partnership with the World Affairs Council to be able to reach all the students that we did. So, World Affairs Council has a table over here.
Wow, you guys really knocked me out. Those were great essays. All right, we are going to move on with our program now. Thank you so much once again to the Education Committee. They are getting this disseminated widely and taught in schools. Love it. Okay, our keynote speaker tonight is Deputy District Attorney for Multnomah County. And she's going to be talking on protecting the rights of motherhood and childhood. Please welcome Lauren Kemp.
I have to agree with Gwen. I kind of wish I was before the essay contestant winners because it's a hard act to follow. So an excellent job to both of you. So as Ben said, I am a Deputy District Attorney in Multnomah County, and I thought I'd start by telling you guys a little bit about myself. I've been a Deputy District Attorney for 5 years, and during the 5 years I've worked predominantly in the Domestic Violence Unit, and then also our Juvenile Unit, which deals with minors who commit offenses that would be crimes if they were an adult, and also dependency and termination cases. And those cases involve situations where DHS has gotten involved with the family because the parents aren't able to safely parent the children. And the DA's office gets involved to determine whether or not the case needs to go to trial and if the parents can safely get the children returned. So I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a bit, but those are the units that I've been primarily focused on. In addition to that, I've worked with the National Crime Victims Institute. They are local, a nationwide nonprofit organization, but it's housed here in Portland at Lewis and Clark Law School. And they work with making sure that victims have access to the system, are meaningfully represented, and that victims' rights are considered in prosecution and in outcomes and along the way, since historically, victims were not a party in criminal cases. And finally, I've also worked as a child-appointed special advocate. So I worked on the other side where DHS had removed children, and I worked with the 2 children who've been removed. And I've worked with victims advocates in Dallas County, Texas. So in addition to that, I'm also a new mother. So my son Henry had his first day of daycare today, and he's 4.5 months old. So this was a big day, but also this particular topic was important to me, not only from my work, but also sort of experiencing new motherhood and childhood with my son. So in looking at Article 25, Paragraph 2, when Gwen invited me to speak, I will admit that I was familiar with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but not familiar enough to not pull it up and look through it and sort of try and dissect what was Article 25 trying to get at. And when I read it, motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. And in my practice, typically what I do is I dissect every single word and figure out how many different interpretations there might be, and then get ready to argue my point of view. And I looked online and I was like, where are the arguments? Where's the dissection? Where are all the various interpretations? And I didn't find that. And I realized after reading sort of the history of how this document was created, that this really is talking about basic human rights that everyone can agree on from wherever they are from. And the fact that this occurred in 1948 after World War II, and in response to that, I thought was particularly compelling and also sort of guided how I looked at the rights that the article was trying to get at. And I also used my own sort of experiences in my work to shape what rights they were speaking about in my mind. And so when I look at this article, I look at first the Declaration as a whole, and I believe in one of the articles they talk about the right of equality for women of all races, color, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And it's the right to be protected and to be secure, to not be subjected to cruel or degrading treatment, and to be respected and treated with dignity. And I was thinking in terms of the right of a mother in particular, it's also the right to be involved in your child's life, to be able to make decisions for you and your child, to be respected with those decisions, and to have input in those decisions. And for the right of a child, in my experiences, when I think of childhood, I think of something that should be protected, and that children should have the opportunity to really experience childhood. And part of that is to not be neglected, to not be exposed to drugs and violence, to not be trafficked, and to not be abused. Gwen and I spoke a little bit on the phone, and one of the things that she wanted me to talk about was how crime and violence impacts those rights. And when I think about crime and violence and how it impacts the rights of motherhood and childhood and those basic rights that I just expounded on, it impacts them in every manner and form. In the domestic violence unit, the way that I saw crime and violence impact basic human rights is the right of the mother and the victim to be protected in her home, to feel safe in her home, to feel like she has shelter, to feel that she is heard, that she has people in the community that care about her if she does need assistance. I see it as the right of the mothers who leave the relationship if she needs to be, which often can occur because of the threats that the abuser makes either towards the mother's safety, towards keeping the children, towards leaving with the children. Oftentimes abusers have financial control, power, and they've also isolated the victim. In terms of the child who's there in the house, their basic human rights are also being violated. And those rights include feeling safe, feeling like they're protected, not being subjected to watching your parents engage in violence, not feeling like you have to be the protector because your mother is getting assaulted in front of you. Some other ways that violence that I've seen in my work, how it affects, is in the human trafficking component or context. In Oregon, there was a recent study that was done by a Portland State University professor, Christopher Carey and Lena Teplitsky, and they worked with DHS and the Sexual Assault Response Center to develop some statistics about what was going on in Portland, and they determined that 469 children were trafficked for sex in the Portland metro area. The average age of those victims were 15 and a half years old. The youngest victim was 8 years old, and 16.62% of those minor victims had their own children. So obviously, those basic human rights in the human trafficking context are being violated, along with a number of other rights, because oftentimes human trafficking is largely connected to domestic violence, and oftentimes it's connected with gangs and other violent criminal lifestyles. And finally, when I was thinking about how these basic human rights are impacted by crime and violence, I also thought about substance abuse. Obviously, there is a fair amount of drugs and substance abuse in the criminal justice system. And the way that I see that impact my cases is, first off, domestic violence oftentimes is precipitated by people being on substances, drinking a lot, arguments, fighting, and that being sort of a continual pattern. But the other way I see it, and more frequently I see it now since I'm in the juvenile unit, is the context in which substance abuse affects the family at large, in terms of the mother's ability to safely parent the child while she's on substances, in terms of a mother who's potentially incarcerated because she's come into the system, or a family that is struggling to make ends meet, and in part because money is flowing out of the family to go for substance purchases. So there are a number of ways in which the DA's office is trying to combat basic human rights being violated. We do have specialized units at the DA's office. As I mentioned, I've been in the domestic violence unit and also the juvenile unit. The domestic violence unit is made up of specialized deputy district attorneys who only deal with domestic violence cases. And part of the reason that we do that is so that victims have a safe, secure, stable person that they are used to working with, who will be there for the life of their case. Not only do you have a specialized deputy district attorney, but we also have victims advocates who work with the victim from the moment that the case is issued. And that means that the moment that the offender is arrested and we've decided that we can press charges, the victim's advocate reaches out to the victim and tries to provide them with information about shelters, information about how to obtain a restraining order, information about accessing crime victims' compensation, which can help pay for doctor's bills and medical bills and other things that have been the cause of or been created by the offender's actions. Not only that, but we also have partnered with the Gateway Center, which is a center that houses a number of different service agencies, including DHS, and a domestic violence navigators who go in and they act as a navigator for the victim to try and navigate the criminal justice system, also trying to lead the offender, obtaining a restraining order, getting a domestic violence shelter grant or a way into which they can provide new housing. In addition to the domestic violence unit, though, we also have a true human trafficking unit. That unit works, there's 3 specialized DAs in that unit, and that unit works with Portland Police and a number of other local providers who provide support for sexual assault victims. And the human trafficking unit has also been working on prosecuting the pimps who are trafficking these young ladies. It is notoriously difficult to get these prosecutions, in part because the victim is often very young, is often very afraid, and oftentimes the pimp is not just a pimp, but somebody that is promised to be a boyfriend, somebody that has removed this person from their home and their family and acted with them as if they were in a relationship, and then suddenly turns to them and indicates, listen, we run out of money, babe, and I need your help. So oftentimes the victim isn't quite sure that this person should be prosecuted. They're conflicted because this is a person that's close to them and a person who's also threatened them and intimidated them. That's several of the units that we have in our office, but I wanted to speak particularly to one of the types of cases that I've been working on for a number of years now, and that's through DHS, and kind of wraps up what I think are the important things about basic human rights for motherhood and childhood in relation to the DA's office and what we do. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that the juvenile unit handles are cases in which parents have been determined that they're not safely parenting their children, and what these are called are dependency cases. And a dependency case starts when DHS gets involved. Oftentimes, DHS gets a hotline call from a teacher or a mandatory reporter like a police officer or an attorney, and the life of the case begins there. And these hotline calls are typically something along the lines of, I'm concerned about this child because the child continues to show up at school, and the child smells like urine and is having difficulty with their speech, and we're having difficulty reaching the parents, and the child doesn't come many days for school and has missed the last three weeks, and when we contact the parents, they set up appointments but they don't come. DHS gets involved. They go out, they do an assessment or an investigation, and oftentimes they determine that the parents need some help. And that can be substance abuse issues. The parents aren't able to safely parent the children because they're using heroin or meth, and because of that, the house is in a neglected state. The children haven't gotten doctor's visits, they haven't gotten immunized, they're living in filth. It may be that, in addition, the parents are using substances because they are self-medicating and there's mental health issues. And the parents are concerned about having to go to a doctor and taking medication. They don't want to do that, which is understandable. DHS gets involved and they reach out to the parents and they offer services. And these services can be a number of things. They can be, let's set you up with Cascadia or LifeWorks mental health services. Let's get you involved with a drug and alcohol program. Let's get you involved with a hands-on parenting person, a person who can come into the house and talk with you about what your specific issues are and how we can address them. If you have mental health needs for your child, let's get an assessment and an evaluation and see how we can get this child engaged in school. Let's go to the school and meet with the teacher and the counselor and work out a plan so that we can make sure that this child is engaged and doing well. And the idea is that DHS and the parents will work together on a voluntary basis. Sometimes, and oftentimes, that works out, and DHS offers those services, and the parents get what they need, and the family moves on. But in the times when the parents refuse to do those services, when the times when the parents say, okay, I'm going to get engaged in substance abuse treatment, but then fail to follow through, or they show up and DHS notices that they're high, and they continue to be high. The times that the follow-through is just not there, then what DHS does is they come before the court. A district attorney, a deputy district attorney is assigned to the case, and they provide the court with information. These are all the things that we've done to try and help the parents. And these are why we are still concerned about the parents' ability to safely and minimally adequately provide for these children. And at that time, the mother and the father, there's a legal father, gets appointed an attorney. Like I said, there's a deputy district attorney involved, and we come and the DHS provides all the information that they have about what they've been doing with the family and why these concerns are still prevalent. And then there's a meeting set up, and it's a meeting between all the parties. It's between DHS, the parents attorneys, the DA's office, and we go through what are basically allegations. Okay, mom, this is it. You know, you had tested urinalysis for meth 3 or 4 times in the last month. And you're saying to me that you can't safely parent the child. What do we need to do to get you on board in substance abuse treatment? Or, mom, you have a history of mental health issues. There are police reports indicating that you have been taken to the hospital a number of times on a mental health hold. What can we do to get you into the particular mental health treatment that you need? So we meet as a group, and it's not always, well, we try for it to be as pleasant and cooperative as possible, but obviously if there are attorneys involved, it can get very adversarial. But the idea is that we're going to come and we're going to meet as a group, and that the parents are going to be protected, and the mother's rights are going to be protected because she has her attorney there. And we're going to figure out what needs to be done in order to get these children safely returned to their family. Because at the end of the day, the family really is the best place for these children to remain if there's any possible way to do it safely. And so part of our job is to work with the family to make sure that the mother's rights are protected and to figure out where is the issue lying, where are the issues. And so we make a plan, and the mother and the father, if he's participating, make admissions, and they say, okay, I'm ready to come to the table. I do have a substance abuse issue. It's taken me now for a court intervention, and I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to get engaged. Or I'm ready to engage in mental health treatment. Or I'm ready to go to a batterers intervention class, or go to a victimization class and learn about how to protect myself and make a safety plan, and not to allow this person back and have access to my children. And after that, we come to the table, we go to the court signs off on the plan, and services are implemented. And DHS has what's called a permanency worker who gets involved and is there for the life of the case. And the hope is that these parents will successfully complete this treatment. And like anything, as we know, changes can be difficult to do, particularly when you're talking about changes that involve abuse, like substance abuse. So there are hiccups, always. There are always hiccups. But the parents have approximately a year to try and get engaged in services and do well enough so that the parents can have the children back in the home and safely parent them. There are cases, however, where that isn't possible, and that then goes on to our termination unit, and our termination unit deals with terminating parental rights permanently. In terms of sort of the child abuse and neglect, which is what that's dealing with, at the end of the day, the hope is that that the mother's rights will be protected in this process, that the mother will have her attorney present to protect those rights, and that she will gain the services that she needs in order to be a part of her child's life. But at the very end, the idea is that childhood should be protected, and that these children are vulnerable, and their basic rights should be paramount to the mothers, and that their safety should be paramount as well. So I was noticing at this table over here there was some posters that I believe was a poster contest, and it talked about coming together for human rights. And I thought that was particularly relevant to what I'm talking about, because at the end of the day, we rely at the district attorney's office on a number of service providers to help protect basic human rights. In the context of a dependency case, we rely on DHS to come in, we rely on the service people that they ask to come in, the substance abuse counselors, the mental health counselors, the parenting skills trainers. We rely on the court to be consistent with the parents. In Multnomah County, there's one court one judge for each family follows the life of the case, whether that case is for 1 month or whether it's 5 children down the road and 10 years long. So we certainly rely on many people in our community to assist us with protecting human rights. And I applaud the work that you guys are doing in keeping that alive. And I'd like to end with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who I know was very instrumental in writing the Declaration. A mature person is one who does not think only in absolutes, who is able to be objective even when deeply stirred emotionally, who has learned that there is both good and bad in all people and in all things, and who walks humbly and deals charitably with the circumstances of life, knowing that in his world no one is all-knowing, and therefore all of us need both love and charity. Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. Now, our next thing on our program is going to be a song by Scott Bickford.
Well, I was thinking when she was saying about each act has been hard to follow. It's been very compelling and moving information. Just thanking the young people for their wonderful essays. And I don't know, someone picked this song and asked us to learn this. Do you know who that was that specifically asked for this song? It was Gwen. Okay, so this song is, and it really is very fitting, and it's, and I can't sing if I get emotional, so might be too late. Come stop your crying, it'll be alright. Just take my hand, hold it tight. I will protect you from all around you. I will be there, don't you cry. For one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold you, keep you safe and warm. When bond between us, it can't be broken. I will be here, don't you cry. 'Cause you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. You'll be in my heart. No matter what they say, you'll be here in my heart, always. Why can't they understand the way we feel? They just don't trust what they can't explain. I know we're different, but deep inside us, we're not that different at all. And you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. Don't listen to them, 'cause what did they
close, but we get to have a legislative update. We are very lucky to have the chairman for the Oregon Commission on Hispanic Affairs here with us tonight. And speaking on prenatal care for all women, and a recent legislation that was passed, is their chairperson, Alberto Moreno. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Turn it this way. I think I'm also vertically challenged in a different way. But here comes a professional. Yeah. And did you turn it off? Yeah. I think somebody turned it off. Great. I think that might be better. Wonderful. Thank you. It helps if we turn it on. Again, my name is Alberto Moreno. I'm the recently elected chair for the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, which is a commission appointed by the governor of our state to ensure that the 500,000 Latinos who live, who reside, who pray and who work in this state have the same equal unabridged access to the same protections that everyone in this room enjoys. So that is the role of the commission. I'm also the founder and executive director of an organization called the Oregon Latino Health Coalition. And it is through that organization that we just pushed for a change in law that would ensure that all women have access to prenatal care. That is, that prenatal care becomes a human right in the state of Oregon, which before this legislative session was not the case. I think as you're hearing about human rights, it's possible that you may be thinking that those human rights are preserved and observed fully here in this country, that the violation of those human rights, that the absence of protection resides and only happens in other countries. But the reality is that for over 5,000 women who are pregnant every year, there was no such protection. That until we passed this piece of legislation, that 5,000 women each year did not have legal, let me repeat that, did not have legal access to prenatal care services. Which means that not only did the mother not get the care that she needed at a very important and vulnerable time, but it meant that the child that was developing inside of her was also not getting the folic acid that the child needed, was not getting the nutrition that it needed, was not getting the care that it needed. And that we cared so much about national origin that we had written that into law. We had gone out of our way as a state to exclude over 5,000 women each year from this vital service. It was not an accident. It didn't happen overnight. We made it happen, meaning that we set about energy, we set about our intention to specifically exclude a class of women from what I think it should be an inalienable human right, which is the right to healthcare access in this country. And so we worked on this issue for about 10 years, if you can believe it or not. And in those 10 years, no one would come to the front to champion this for us. Funders did not want to touch the issue and fund our work. Many of the organizations that you hold dear and think highly of, as you should, were very reticent to touch this issue because it focused on issues of national origin. What's important to track about this issue is that the child who would eventually be born was going to be what? Thank you, a U.S. citizen. And I want to invite you to think a little bit about that, because regardless of what you think of what the decision was that the parents made in coming to this country, we have to be so invested in our rancor We have to be so invested in our anger and in our hate that we have to actively deny these children the best possible start in life. That is, we are saying, we so hate the decision that your parents made that we're going to punish you, the child. Now, I don't think that that's who we are as a state, that that's who we are as a nation. This question of debt, this question of children carrying forward the debt of their parents was a question long ago answered, I think, by our forefathers, who eliminated debtors' prisons for the children of their parents who had debts, right? We don't encumber children with the debts of their parents. We come from, I think, traditions where we don't lay upon the children the sins of the parents. So it made no sense to us that there was a group of women in the state who were not brought into the same grace, that were not brought under the same protection as all of us here. We began in my organization with the radical assumption that all life is equal, that all life is precious, and that all life is deserving of that universal protection. That all of our children should have the same healthy early start in life, and that we collectively share this beautiful and delicate condition called interdependence, that in fact it is in our best interest to make sure that all of these children have the best possible start in life, because it means that we'll spend less in the emergency room, and we'll spend less in the NICU unit, that we'll spend less in social workers who have to go out to the homes, speech therapists, lawyers, attorneys, social security benefits, right? There is a kind of price tag, I would argue, to our hate, to our intolerance. And I think it was our job, I certainly took it to be my duty within the Oregon Latino Health Coalition to help us do the right thing by these women, by these children. So I'm happy to share with you that after working on this issue for 10 years, all women now in the state of Oregon have prenatal care as a basic, inalienable human right. And so, thank you. And we could not have done it alone. In fact, we did not do it alone. So if you ever get a chance to thank Representative Kenny Geyer, please thank her for her work and her leadership on this. We couldn't have done it without her help and the help of many of our other allies. But I tell you that we didn't do it alone because while the problem was not created of its own accord, in isolation, without intention, without design and desire, the solution had to involve all of us. The solution had to invite a different kind of intention, inviting us to walk in this world in ways that were different, that invited equity and equality for all children regardless of their national origin. So I just want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for calling these questions, and not only calling the question of human rights and but living out the protection and the preservation of those human rights. It is one thing to call them forward into being. It is another thing entire to preserve them. And not to preserve them in law, while that's important. You have a district attorney who can tell you that, who has told you that very eloquently. But I would argue that the worth of those human rights that you've stipulated, 30 of them, that the worth of them is only so much as they are preserved for the least of us. as much as they are observed for the least of us, who don't speak this language, who don't look like us, who come from a gender that doesn't enjoy the same protections and the same opportunity as men, for example. Right? And so that is our charge today. I think that's why you're here, and that's why you're living out these 30 creeds, these 30 values, these 30 beliefs, because you believe fully, and you live out those beliefs, that everyone is deserving of those protections. So I thank you for your work, and I think we're going to let you go home. You've been here for a long time. Thank you.
All right, we're coming to the end of our program here. I need one last person here. We're going to have the announcement of the Human Rights Poster Contest winners from the Washington County Human Rights Commission. Please welcome Lori Stewart.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Lori Stewart. I'm the Vice Chair of the Human Rights Council of Washington County. And we've been around since 2006. We were founded by our late Chair, Emily Georges Gottfried, to promote respect and dignity of all by supporting a community where every person is valued and equal rights and diversity are embraced. Like many of you here, we're passionate about human rights and promoting fairness, justice, and respect for the basic rights of all the people of our community. Now, Washington County seems pretty far removed from the kinds of horror and genocide that inspired the Universal Declaration of Human Rights all those years ago. However, we know from our work, one of the things that we do, we host listening sessions, we have outreach activities and educational activities. We try to collect measures of how we're doing as a county in terms of observing human rights and what kinds of measures we can come up with to kind of see how we're doing. And one of the things that we've learned is that even in a place as just privileged, lucky, and lovely as Washington County in Oregon, even right here in our community, we have people who are experiencing human trafficking. We have housing and employment discrimination and intimidation. We have racial profiling. We have bullying and harassment due to ethnicity and sexual orientation. We have domestic violence. We have sexual assault. All of the things that have plagued human beings for an awfully long time. They're not on quite as mass and institutionalized a scale, but the need for vigilance doesn't go away because now it's micro abuses, little tiny abuses all around us that still, there's still a great deal of work to be done to try to protect human rights in the world. And so even in the privileged and lovely little places like Washington County, this is something that I think people need to care about and be involved in. So among the things that we do in honor of this event, we had we asked all of the cities in Washington County to issue proclamations in honor of Human Rights Day. And we got, actually this year, pretty total, all of our major cities gave us, this one's from Forest Grove, but, and those towns include Banks and Beaverton, Cornelius, Forest Grove, Hillsborough, North Plains, Sherwood, Tiger, Tualatin, and the Washington County Board of Commissioners. So we got a lot of people out there. Not as big as y'all, but still quite a few. But of all of those kind of sad and depressing things that we deal with and that we care about and that we work for, there's one lovely, happy thing that we do that was actually one of Emily Gottfried's favorite things, and that is to have our annual poster contest where we ask kids in grades K through 12, private and public schools throughout Washington County, to do a poster on a different theme. This year's theme, as you can see here, is coming together for human rights. And I couldn't show you all of our entries, but I did pick the winners. And our grand prize winner, which is the one in the red, which I invite you to take a look at, is by Amina Zakarne, who's a second grade student at the Islamic School of the Muslim Educational Trust in Aloha. And she's a second grader. And we were much delighted with her lovely piece. The actual presentation of the award will happen at the Martin Luther King Day celebration in Beaverton in January, so you're getting an early sneak peek But we do invite you to go and have a look at those, and the only thing I have to say is that the web address that's on my brochure is actually out of date, and there's a new one. I've got it over there, and we'll have those posted by tomorrow so that you can see all of the different ones there. But we wanted to join with you all here in celebrating what is, to me, such an incredible and such an important historical event. Those years ago when they first passed this thing in the ashes of World War II. And something that I hope you will all continue to hold dear to your hearts and continue to fight for, because the need for that will probably never end, unfortunately. But the more we fight for it, the less of a need there will be, and that's the beauty of it. Thank you all, and have a good holiday season.
Well, we've had many wonderful speakers. We enjoyed hearing from a lot of wonderful people. And now I want to thank our wonderful co-sponsors. So as I call out your name, please stand up and please let's just applaud everyone as they stand. So let's start with, we're going to do it alphabetically. Let's start with Circle of Peace. It's one of our co-sponsors. Is one of our co-sponsors. Interfaith Council of Greater Portland, please stand. Religious Action Network of Washington County. Women Voters. Yay. Oregon Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs. Commission on Black Affairs, Oregon Commission on Hispanic Affairs, the Oregon Commission for Women, Portland Human Rights Commission, the United Methodist Women's Organization of First United Methodist Church, Washington County Human Rights Commission, Peace Institute, World Affairs Council, Youth for Human Rights Delphian School Chapter, thank you for being here. And Zonta, thank you for being here. So let's just wrap this up, and I have to end it off with some very famous words from Eleanor Roosevelt. In the long term, governments do not set treaties, they adopt those already established within the body of the people. To persuade governments to fully implement the Universal Declaration of Human Rights requires effective and sustained action at a grassroots level. In reply then to the question, who will ensure that human rights are respected, the primary architect of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Eleanor Roosevelt, has given an answer that rings with eloquence and truth. Where, after all, do human rights begin? In small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for the progress in the larger world. Thank you so much for being with us. Please visit the tables and eat more food. Please eat more food.